podcast. David Icke has been warning us about the elitist agenda for over 30 years. They used to call him crazy. Now they call him a prophet. This is David Icke on the Blood Money podcast with Vem Miller. All right, so we are on the latest Blood Money podcast, and I'm so excited to announce that today we have the one and only David Icke on our show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, mate. Nice to talk to you.
I am so excited to have you on, sir. So, let's just dive right into it. I mean, our viewers know you very well, and, you've been on the forefront of exposing all the nonsense that's been going on in our world. Now, tell us the latest. What is your latest concerns? What are the latest movements you see happening in terms of this march towards authoritarianism, towards tyranny, and all the other nonsense they have coming towards us?
Well, the end goal, I have this phrase, know the outcome. Say again?
Oh, I didn't say anything. Sorry. That was just some feedback.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know. Sorry.
No worries.
Shall I start again?
Yeah. Go right ahead. Yes.
Well, I have a phrase which I've been using over the years, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. And so if you look at the world without knowing what the outcome is going to be, then what you have is apparently a series of random events going on and no coherent reason for them. But once you know where the agenda is planning to take the human society, then suddenly these random events become stepping stones on the way to that outcome. And so what we're seeing now is this focus upon artificial intelligence. It's become more and more and more influential. And the ultimate goal, and we're moving to that very fast at the moment, is to have artificial intelligence running the entire system. And I mean the entire system. We have had what they call the Internet of Things. And it's, funny, I've been doing this for so long. I'm in my 34th year now. And I remember writing in books and warning that the Internet of Things was coming and what that would mean. And now the Internet of Things is everywhere. And for people who haven't come across that, I'm sure they have. It's all these devices, even domestic appliances, cars that are connected to the Internet. And the more you connect the everyday things of life to the Internet and artificial intelligence, the more anyone who controls centrally that artificial intelligence and how it works is going to control your life. But the next stage of it, which we're already beginning to see, is to connect the human brain, the human body to artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. It may sound incredible to people who've not researched this, but just look around, it's happening. And you've got people like Ray Kurzweil at Google, this so-called futurist, who's been saying for a number of years now that by 2030, the year he gives, and that's a very significant year, it comes up in many different areas as being a target year when this really starts to roll out. He said by 2030, humans will be connected to AI. And once that happens, AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it is basically negligible. Because up to this time, they've had to control our perception. And that's the stadium in which the whole thing plays out, human perception. If you can control human perception, you control human society. Because we behave as we do, because we perceive as we do. And we perceive as we do because we form those perceptions from information we receive. And that's why all the censorship is going on, to try to stop alternative ways of seeing the world being communicated, and only the official narratives being heard. Thus, we perceive that the narratives are true and we behave in relation to the fact that they're true. And so it goes on. So this manipulation of information to dictate our perceptions is getting more and more blatantly obvious and fierce, of course. But this next stage that I'm talking about actually goes beyond that. It's a system whereby everybody's connected to artificial intelligence perceptually, and our perceptions come direct from artificial intelligence. And this is something that I've been writing about for decades, the plan to create a human hive mind. Because if you're connecting all humans to artificial intelligence, then someone centrally can dictate perceptions to the entirety of humanity eventually. And obviously that's sometime in the future, all that. But the process towards it is moving on very fast. And what Kurzweil said is that, and he's not alone, I'm just using him as an example, is that humans through AI would be connected to the cloud, as he calls it. And the cloud is an electromagnetic field which is designed ultimately to hit every inch of the planet. And this is 5G, this is 6G, 7G to come. And so you have these towers going up, these 5G towers, for instance, 4G towers already everywhere, going up in the urban areas, but you can't hit every inch of the planet from towers. So what they're doing, quite openly saying it's a good thing, is putting up thousands and thousands and thousands of satellites, low orbit, to fire this stuff at the Earth from low orbit. And of course, the leader in all this is Elon Musk and SpaceX. There are others, but he's the leader of it, and he's got permission for extraordinary numbers of low orbit satellites to go up there. And very early on in this Starlink program of his, astronomers were saying, you're changing the night sky. It's not, we can't see things that we could see before. Well, what I would say to those people is hang on, because you've seen nothing yet, given the permissions he's been given. So the idea is that the cloud becomes our mission control. It becomes the perceptual master that feeds us our perceptions. And so that's what they're planning to do. And that's the ultimate control of humanity, whereby what we think is what they tell us to think.
Wow. So, I was hanging out with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about this idea of a brain chip, and you could learn Cantonese in a matter of seconds, right? And he was saying, like, that's really cool. And I was like, wait a minute, like, who controls that chip? Are you concerned about being hacked? What would you say to my friend who doesn't know the things that you and I know in terms of what this chip can do to the human body and the human mind?
Well, on the subject of chips, again, we come to Elon Musk. Elon Musk came out with this warning almost that artificial intelligence could be the end of humanity as we know it, and absolutely as we know it, 100%. That's the idea. But then he starts a company called Neuralink to connect the human brain to computers and AI. And what he was talking about is that part of the skull would be removed and sensors put into the brain, and that's how it would be done. Now, of course, that's not the way it's planned to be done, because how many people would have that done? But in my latest book, The Dream, I quote Elon Musk from another interview in which this point is put to him. The point that, you take a bit of the skull away and put sensors in. Well, how many people are going to do that? And what his reply was, well, you wouldn't really have to do that, because you can put the sensors in, the connection in, via the veins. What do you mean by that? Well, via vaccines. And it's nanotechnology. Over the years, we've been warned about, and quite rightly, but we've been warned about these rice-sized microchips, which people thousands of people in Sweden have had these rice-type microchips put into their bodies so they can open doors without having to push the door, lazy buggers. But it's not actually about that. It's a bit of more than a bit of a diversion. It's really nanotechnology. And with this fake vaccine that's been flying around, that's not even a vaccine, this mRNA synthetic material, is nanotechnology, which is self-replicating in the body. And the idea, I would absolutely suggest, is to connect us to the cloud. And that's the way this artificial intelligence will be connected to us. And while we're looking over there, well, I'm not having one of them microchips. I'm not having my skull cut away. It's actually done in another way. And in the same way, Elon Musk is this week. He's been talking about interplanetary travel. It becomes possible after his latest rocket took off and exploded. But that's another diversion, because over the years, I have talked to so many people, insiders, military insiders, intelligence insiders, who tell me of technology that is vastly, almost breathtakingly advanced to what we see in the public arena. And this is another important point, because if you can hold back the cutting edge of technology, and you present in the public arena a fake cutting edge of technology, then when you're using the stuff and doing the stuff with the other technology to advance your agenda, when people like me say, hey, they're actually doing this, when people think, no, they can't be doing that, that's not possible, here's the cutting edge of technology. And I just wonder why Elon Musk, with his connections, he must know of what's possible outside the public arena, the technological possibility. Why he's continuing to push, and major corporations like Fidelity Investments and Google are financially supporting SpaceX in its programs. Why they are going to all this cost and all this effort to say that they're trying to get to Mars or wherever in conventional terms, conventional rocket terms, when I've had it, and not just me, other people too, who I've met, I've had it explained to them that there's technology where they literally, a number of people have explained it this way, how they have, insiders, how they have walked into something, a bit like an elevator. They describe it like an elevator. You walk in, the door's closed, and the door's open, and they're somewhere else, like on Mars or somewhere. And it's a projection. They've been projected. Now, why would you be going down the conventional route of a rocket to get somewhere when that's going on? And if you research what's called the secret space program, as opposed to the public arena one, we're not going to the moon anymore, no, all this, that's too expensive or whatever. The secret space program is light years ahead of space shuttles and such like. And again, on Iconic, our media platform, we had an interview recently with a man called Darrell D. James, who works in the US Navy. And he describes how he was seconded to not actually work in an official US base, but underground base, but an RAF one in Britain called St. Morgan in Cornwall. And he describes how he went along really unknowing what was happening. And he met a reptilian entity, he says. This is a straight up and down American military guy, a reptilian entity in the underground base. He met a gray entity in the underground base. And he said he learned about this secret space program. And which is like it's like Star Trek, actually. And interesting thing he mentioned, to bring it round to this whole idea of technology, the cutting edge of technology not being what it appears to be. He said he was in a room in this underground base, which was RAF officially and at the entrance, but it was run by the American military behind the scenes. And interestingly, he describes a system of colors that dictate where people can go and can't go. And if you go somewhere that with a color that you're not allowed to go, then you're in serious trouble. And that rang true to me because there's another RAF base in Yorkshire in Britain called Menwith Hill. And I knew someone years ago who went into Menwith Hill. And he said it's RAF at the entrance, and then it's US military once you get in there. And he says there's this series of colors where you can only go where your color designated and won't be tied if you go anywhere else. So that rang true when Daryl D. James was describing this. But what he said was he was in a room in 2003 and he was talking to someone else. He'd not long arrived and he was getting up to speed. And this other officer was telling him some things. And suddenly he said, there's a voice boomed into the room out of nowhere, telling this guy, shut up, because you're breaking the regulations. And this is the consequences if you go any further. And at which point he shut up. And then the next day, he met another officer at the base who said to him, oh, you've heard the voice then? 2003, this is.
Wow. He
said, yeah. He said, what was the voice? He said, it's a new technology we're testing called 5G.
Wow.
And so this is another thing to emphasize. Politicians are not driving this agenda towards dystopia. They're gophers in it, and some of them know what they're doing. But the real promoters, the real drivers of it are not the here today, gone tomorrow politicians. They're those that are always there. And one level of people that are always there is the military. And this is why presidents of the United States, apparently the commander-in-chief of the US military, are not allowed to know what goes on in the underground bases and endless military secrets and secret programs that are going on. They're not allowed to know in case they actually turn out to be genuine for a change and say, oh, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I've found is going on. So even presidents are not allowed to know this stuff. And it has to come out through whistleblowers and what have you. So this technological control that I'm describing based on artificial intelligence is where this thing is really going. And we're starting to enter that sequence of events towards that now.
Wow. So we were talking about Elon Musk. I mean, a lot of people think Elon Musk is one of the good guys. A lot of people think that he's actually, planning a lot of bad things in terms of transhumanism. I mean, what's your assessment of what Elon Musk is doing?
Well, I look at people and I don't make a judgment by their words because they're easy. I make a judgment by their actions. So if you look at the companies that are fronted up by Elon Musk, they're all companies that are advancing this agenda by what I call the global cult, this global network of secret societies. And so you look at SpaceX. SpaceX is putting up the low orbit satellites. It's the leader in that are creating this cloud, which is absolutely essential to AI control of human perception. He's fronting up Neuralink, which is selling the idea of connecting AI to the human brain, even though he said that AI could be the end of humanity as we know it. And then he's fronting up Tesla, and Tesla is obviously the leading promoter of the electric autonomous vehicle market. And the electric vehicle agenda is nothing to do with saving the planet. I mean, that is such a joke. It's unbelievable. If you look at the environmental cost of electric cars and the batteries and all the little kids in Africa that are in dire conditions, getting the resources out for the batteries and so on. It's an environmental disaster, and nor is it about replacing petrol and diesel vehicles. because there simply are not enough resources for all the batteries that are necessary. And the batteries have a certain amount of life, and then we have to do something with them as we bring new ones in. There's simply not the resources available to replace all the petrol and diesel cars with electric cars. And so what's it about? It's about getting people out of their vehicles so they have no vehicle, and to advance massively that way what is quite blatantly a war on movement. The idea is to isolate people, and AI is part of this as well, big time, is to isolate people in what they're calling 15-minute cities. These are communities openly being discussed now. These are communities where you can't go more than 15 minutes, 20 minutes, walk or cycle ride from your home. And they say that in these communities, everything you need, well, according to the authorities, everything you need will be within a 15, 20-minute cycle ride or walk. And these communities will be policed by cameras. And initially, you will only be able to go out of that zone, sector, in your vehicle so many times a week or month, and it's not many. Eventually, you won't be able to go outside at all of that sector without permission. And you won't have a vehicle to do it anyway in the end, because not only is there not the resources for electric cars, the cost of them, most people can't afford them. And what they're doing, again, I've been using this phrase over the years, the totalitarian tiptoe, where this sequence moves towards the outcome. And suddenly you see, actually, it's not random, it's the very clear sequence. So what they're doing now in cities around the world, I'll give London as an example, where the mayor, a guy called Sadiq Khan, has introduced something called the ULEZ zone for the whole of London. And ULEZ is ultra low emission zone. And if you've got a vehicle that does not comply with the ultra low emission regulations, then you have to pay £12.50 a day to drive your vehicle off your property onto the road. Because all over London are these cameras, number plate cameras, that are picking up your number plate. And if your vehicle is non-compliant, and of course it's all in a big database, then you get fined £12.50 a day to use your vehicle. This is destroying the livelihoods of endless numbers of people. But this is the point. To police the ULEZ zone, cameras, number plate cameras, are going up all over London. But they're not just for the ULEZ zone. These are eventually to police the 15-minute sectors or communities, whereby if you leave them when you're not supposed to leave them according to the regulations, then you will be fined when you leave your community area more than you're supposed to. And this is the point again where everything connects. What we're seeing, I've been warning about this for a very, very long time, but what we're seeing now are countries all over the world, the European Union, many, many countries together, and the Federal Reserve in America, another example, are talking about the creation of this digital currency. I wrote in a book which was published in 1993, and I wrote it in 92, 93. And I said, the plan is to get rid of cash. So there's no cash and only a single electronic currency.
Did you say 93?
93, yeah.
Wow.
And so what has happened, of course, is progressively cash is being taken out of circulation. And you had during the COVID period, Tedros at the World Health Organization, who is just a gopher for this cult, the Rockefellers created the World Health Organization. It's run now for the Rockefellers and the cult by Bill Gates, the biggest private funder. And he said, you'll remember early on, you could get the quote virus from handling cash. And suddenly I'm going out and there's little kiosks on railway stations selling your coffee where they've always just been a cash business. And they're saying, oh, no, we're only taking cards now. We're not taking cash because of the virus. So COVID alone advanced massively this removal of cash. And there's so many now. What it's like in America, I'm sure it's the same. But here, in Britain, there's so many cashless businesses now where you go in and they won't take cash. And the reason is to force you to go to the digital currency. And all over Britain, and I'm sure all over everywhere, but certainly I can give the British example, ATMs are being taken out, so you can't access cash. Bank branches are being closed incessantly, so you can't go into your local bank and have a cash transaction. They're forcing you onto the internet because they're forcing you onto the digital currency. Now, this has many, many implications for freedom. And one is that they will be able to fine you through artificial intelligence. This is what happens in China now. And if you want to see the West today, tomorrow rather, look at China today. Whereby if you go past one of those cameras, number plate cameras, when you shouldn't, according to their rules, at the moment, people can get together en masse and say, okay, we're not paying the fine then. We're not paying, all of us are not paying the fine, therefore it's unenforceable. But through the digital currency, you'll be fined in terms of your fine will be taken from your bank account when you pass the camera. It will, in China, you jaywalking in China, by the time you get home, the fine's been taken from your bank account. And this is the plan for the West. And the other thing about the digital currency, which is perhaps the most sinister of all, is it's programmable. So it will be possible for your money to be programmed so that it will not purchase what the authorities don't want you to purchase. And I had an experience, or someone I know had an experience just a few days ago, when they wanted to transfer some money from their bank account to buy some cryptocurrency. And suddenly the fraud department of the bank, a major British bank, is coming onto them, questioning them why they're buying crypto. Why are you buying crypto? What's the reason? And so on and so forth, and questions relating to that. And of course, my friend said, it's none of your business and all that. But this is an example of the stepping stone to the digital currency, where in the end, you won't be able to buy crypto if they don't want you to buy crypto. You won't be able to buy this book or that book if they don't want you to buy it. Simply won't, the programmed electronic digital money will not purchase it. And this is the level of control that they're moving towards. And they're trying to do it as fast as possible for a simple reason, that they're in a race against what we call time to lock down through AI human freedom before enough people have realized what's going on to bring it to an end. And so that's where we are. And AI is the way that a tiny few wish to control the global population, because once AI is involved, that it gives them the opportunity to do that.
Man, that is so interesting. I have a question here that I was writing down as we're talking, because what's really fascinating to me, as I'm interviewing a lot of people on this Blood Money podcast. So, we've heard things about this climate change, and what it really is geoengineering. It really is 5G. They're trying to destroy the environment. We've had a lady by the name of Nikki Florio on who talks about all the things that are doing really to destroy plant life on this planet, right? And then we talk about, removing carbons, removing humans. Okay. And I'm a layman, and I have to ask this question. When I think about the world that these individuals are trying to create, these so called elite, it doesn't seem to be very inhabitable by human beings, right? So, my first question is that assessment accurate? And the second question is, if that assessment is accurate, what is at the top of this so-called elite chain? Are we talking about non-human beings that are manipulating the elite into basically destroying this planet so it becomes uninhabitable?
Well, uninhabitable by humans as we know them, because we are in the process very clearly of being moved from what you might call human 1.0, which is the biological human, to a far more synthetic human, or human 2.0. And that human 2.0 is part of the transformation that will allow some humanity to live in a very different environment to the one we have now. And when you look at Brave New World, the book published in 1932 by Aldous Huxley, he had access to this cult agenda, and that's why he could be so accurate. And in his own way, he was trying to warn about it. But if you read Brave New World, he talks about creating a human that will not be able to procreate in the way that we procreate now. And it would be procreated, the species would be procreated technologically. Now, the technology that he described that would do this is now coming online. And again, that's the cutting edge that the public see. It's not the cutting edge outside the public arena waiting to eventually come in. And this non-procreating human is why a number of things are happening. First of all, sperm counts are plummeting all over the world. Plummeting. Some estimates say that procreation as we know it would end by about 2045. It's 1 year I saw. If this disappearance of sperm counts goes on. So why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons how they're doing it. It's to do with chemicals. It's to do with electromagnetic fields, not least the smartphones and stuff like that. But cumulatively, it's having this effect because they're phasing out human 1.0. They don't want them anymore. And how is human 1.0 procreated? Through men and women. So who's being targeted? Well, first of all, men are targeted. They go on being targeted, but men, toxic masculinity. And I said when that started, that war on men, they're coming for the women next. And they are. And they're already starting to do this. And they're doing it through the transgender agenda. So what's that about? Why is suddenly transgender everywhere when it wasn't before? And I have this phrase I've used over the years. If something comes out of nowhere and it's suddenly everywhere, then it's the agenda. Someone's pressed a button on the next stage.
Yeah.
And so what's this transgender about? Well, it's a stepping stone. These transgender activists are going around thinking it's all about them. They're just being played like a stringed instrument, because the goal, the end outcome they want, is not transgender, it's no gender. But to get to no gender, you go through transgender. And in the period that they want to really have this happening full blown, the kids of today, especially the small kids, will be the adults. And so this is why they're targeting the kids. to, first of all, confuse their perception of gender on the road to fusing gender in the no gender human. And so someone suddenly had an idea, and everyone had the same idea at the same time, it seems, to let drag queens go into schools and libraries and read stories to very small kids, and then start strutting their stuff in front of very small kids. And what is that for, really? It's confusing gender. You confuse gender first, so suddenly everything's in a state of flux. There's no male, female, biological certainty. You start to confuse it, so all the pieces are all over the place, and then you bring it into another fusion of the no gender human. If you're trying to confuse the gender perceptions of little kids, then a bloke with a beard with a dress on is a very, very good way of doing it. And we have the BBC in Britain talking about the fact that there's now 100 genders. I mean, don't be ridiculous. Of course there's not. But this gender fluidity is simply a stepping stone on the road to the new no gender norm of the human 2.0. So everything starts to connect when you see what the outcomes are planned to be. And so we're in a situation now where people just need to put aside their preconceived ideas of the world and start looking at the evidence instead of just thinking, well, that's nonsense because it's too far out from my perception of normal. Your perception of normal has been programmed for you to believe that, because it then stops you seeing what's really going on beyond the normal you've been programmed to believe in.
Yeah, yeah. And, let's talk about another thing that doesn't make sense here, right? So we're talking about AI, right? Which is basically humans building their own replacement. That makes no sense to me. Do you want to talk about that topic a little bit?
Yeah, well, that would bring me into something you mentioned a few minutes ago, which is what's behind this. Is it non-human? Well, yes, it is. And it suddenly becomes far less of a stretch to think that when you look around, you're absolutely right. When you look around, what we're looking at is an anti-human agenda. This elite are seeking to take control of all the basics of human survival: food, water, energy, all these things they want to control. They're even changing the atmosphere to suit themselves rather than us. So why would that be? Because it's a non-human force that's ultimately behind this. And you would think, would you not, that an anti-human agenda might just be orchestrated by a non-human force? And so as I've been on this road of research now I'm in my 34th year, so many different subjects have had to be researched and fitted together, and they do fit together. So I started off in the early 1990s uncovering this global cult, which is a network of secret societies with an interlocking leadership. If you go deep enough in these secret societies, they all lock into one web. Think of a spider's web around the planet with a spider in the middle. And from the spider comes the agenda. And the strands in the web immediately around the spider are the most exclusive secret societies, where they will absolutely know the game. And as you come out from the spider, you are then hitting all the secret societies we do know about: the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, the inner core of them, that is, and these other secret societies we know about, Skull and Bones Society in the United States and so on. And then you reach this point in the web where the hidden part of it meets the seen. And at that cusp, you've got organizations like the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States, the United Nations, and an organization created by this cult in 1968 called the Club of Rome, and its reason for being is to exploit environmental concerns and create the illusion of them to justify centralization of power dystopia. And out of that Club of Rome has come the climate change hoax, because that's what it is. It's a hoax. The idea that humans are changing the atmosphere and demonizing a gas, carbon dioxide, without which we'd all be dead. There'd be no natural world. There'd be no food source. It'd all be gone. But somehow we're demonizing a gas on which we depend for life, which is extraordinary, but that's the power of programming. And these cusp organizations, which include non-governmental organizations, many of the main ones funded by George Soros, and also so-called think tanks. And the role of this cusp is to take the agenda coming from the hidden and to play it out in the scene in government policy, corporation policy. This is where BlackRock comes in, dictating to the companies it invests in that they're going to follow the climate change agenda and the woke agenda and the trans agenda, etc. And so in the public arena, you then have governments, government agencies, corporations, Silicon Valley, World Health Organization, so on and so forth, who, if you go deep enough in these organizations, they attach to the web. And at that level, they're all the same organization driving the world in the same direction. And it doesn't take many people in a company or organization or government to dictate the policy. It's ridiculous. I mean, you take the police as an example. You don't have to control many positions in the police to control the police and the policy of the police and the actions of the police. All you have to do is to control those key positions that dictate what that policy is going to be. That's real simple. And so if there's someone, for instance, being investigated for pedophilia, who is rich and famous and part of the cult, then the key person from the cult that's in the police hierarchy has the power to do it, will call off the investigation and stop it happening. This is how it works. It's like I say, it's very few people that are needed to dictate to organizations. Corporation, people just do what the level above them tells them to do. Otherwise, they're out of their job. So in the end, in a corporation, a tiny few people are dictating the policy of the entire corporation. And if you're a transnational corporation, well, from the headquarters, wherever that may be, America, Britain, the policy for the entire company worldwide will be dictated by a tiny few people. This is how the whole thing works. Centralization of power. So I'm looking at this cult network in the early 1990s. And I started then saying, well, when did this start? Because obviously, when I look at the structure, this didn't start 5 minutes ago or 50 years ago. When did it start? This is obviously taking a long time to construct this web. And you can go back comfortably through the colonial period of the British Empire and the European empires. You go back eventually through the Roman Empire, which came up into Northern Europe. And then you go into Babylon and ancient Egypt, and you can follow this cult back. And what's been happening is it's as it's passed through the centuries, it's increasingly expanded its power to the point now where it's global, where there's a few people globally dictating to what happens in the world. We saw this with COVID. So my next question, when I realized that, is well, what's been coordinating this all the way through these centuries, thousands of years eventually? Because people have been born, they've played a part in advancing the cult influence, and then they've died. Then other people have come and they've done their bit and they've died, and so on and so forth. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking there has to be a coordinating force that has been orchestrating this through all this period. And that's when you start to go out of this world, out of this reality. And to do that, you have to start researching deeply what this reality is. And when you break it down, and this is mainstream science, they just don't tell you about it as you'd think they would. When you break this down, we don't live in a world. We live in a band of frequency. It's what we live in. So according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our reality, our experienced reality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in all its forms. Some say it's as high as 0.5%. Doesn't matter. It's tiny. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, everything we see is within this band of frequency, is a tiny fraction of the 0.005%. So we are seeing next to nothing. Everything, infinity, lies beyond the visible light band that we can see, which is, like I say, it's almost laughable how narrow it is. And so when you start talking, like I have for a long time, decades now, about the fact that a non-human force is manipulating humanity from the hidden, well, when people say, well, why can't we see it then? Well, the answer is because you can hardly see anything. And then I started to realize that there was this non-human, actually demonic type force that is manipulating our society via this global cult. That's why so many Satanists and what have you involved in this cult, because they are worshiping their satanic gods, and the satanic gods, as Christians would call them, are what is ultimately behind this. And then I started thinking, well, if this is true, then there must be evidence of it in religions, in ancient cultures. It can't have just started. So I started looking around the ancient cultures and different religions, and you find an extraordinarily common theme that in all these different expressions, that a non-human force from the hidden is manipulating human society. And they take it and they call them different names because they're different religions and different cultures and what have you. So they would. But when you look at what they're saying, it's the same. So in Christianity, they have the devil and Satan, and the foot soldiers of the devil, Satan, which are demons. In Islam, which you would think was different to Christianity, in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. They talk about Shaitan or Iblis, the Christian devil, and their demons are called jinn. Then you look at the Gnostic belief system, and they talk about Yod-Baoth, or the demiurge, their version of the devil, and archons, which is Greek for rulers. And then you go around these other cultures, these non-religious cultures, and you find the same recurring theme of a non-human force manipulating human society. And so then I started to realize a number of things, which is one, this demonic force is operating just outside of the human realm band of frequency, in a realm that's known in esoteric terms as the astral realm. And they are manipulating our society via this cult. This cult is simply a vehicle in our frequency band to manipulate on behalf of this non-human force. And then, of course, the question is, this is a key thing, I would really say this to people. what is happening is important, but of course it is. But why it's happening, that's the question that takes you deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Okay, this is happening, but why? So why is this manipulation going on? And then you realize that this demonic force is feeding off human energy. We are its battery, its energetic source, but of a certain kind. Because again, this is mainstream science. Every time we feel emotion, every time we have a thought, we are generating frequencies. We're generating energy. And the nature of that energy, the frequency of that energy, relates to the nature of the thought and the emotion. So anything surrounding fear, anxiety, depression, resentment, hatred, regret, all these emotions are low vibrational, low, slow emotions. And when people are in that emotional state, they might say things like, oh, I feel so heavy today. Why? Because it's a low, slow frequency, and therefore their energetic field is vibrating very slowly, and they get the feeling of density as a result of that. And then other people, they'll be in a lovely mood and they'll say, oh, I feel so light today. And what does that mean? That because emotions and states of being like love and joy, happiness, peace, they are high vibrations. And these demonic entities, some of which, a number of which seem to take a reptilian type form, but not only that, they, by their very perceptual nature, their desire to control, to impose, to impose suffering, which is what they do by manipulating the wars and the hunger and all these things, the deprivations. They are in a low vibrational state by their very perceptual nature. And therefore, if they're going to feed off human energy, they have to manipulate humans to produce that energy within the band of frequency they are operating on, which is a low, slow frequency, which relates to low vibrational human emotion. So what they're doing is, through this cult, is manipulating wars and suffering and deprivation and hunger and conflict in all its forms, whether between two individuals or countries. And they're generating, as a result of that, and the constant anxiety and the fear of the future and the fear of the unknown, all these things, they're generating or manipulating humanity to generate the energy they're feeding off. And when in the Matrix movie, the first one, the Morpheus character held up a battery and said, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these, it was a very profound truth spoken in apparently a fictional movie. They're feeding off us. And, what's happening in these satanic rituals that go on is related to this, because after I started to realize that this demonic realm, this demonic force, these entities existed, again, I thought, well, there has to be evidence of it in what we call history. And then you realize, of course, that these different ancient cultures were worshipping their gods under different names, but actually the same gods. And they were doing sacrificial rituals to them, sacrificing people as an offering to the gods, to placate the gods and all that. And then as I researched these cultists, many famous, rich and famous, I realized that they too were involved in satanic ritual, pedophilia massively as well. Jeffrey Epstein's network, but certainly Satanism, in which they are too doing rituals and rituals, human sacrifice, staggering but true, to their gods. And then you realize that their gods are the same as the ancient gods, because they're all related to this demonic realm in the lower levels of the astral dimension. And so then you ask the question, okay, so what do the gods get out of it then? What do the gods get out of the offering to the gods? What do they get out of it? And then you realize what they're doing is they are doing these rituals of sacrifice in which they build up the terror in the victim, obviously, understandably. And that terror is a very powerful, low vibrational emotional energy. And these entities are feeding off that energy that's coming off the terror of the sacrificed person. And that's the offering. That's what they're getting from it. And that terror then in the physical part of the body, or what we call physical anyway, generates a chemical, an adrenaline that enters the blood, and the Satanists in our realm that are conducting the ritual, they drink that. It gives them a high. It's like a drug to them. And so you have the whole adrenochrome story, which of course has come up from time to time in research into the Washington elite, among others. So this non-human level is ultimately the spider at the center of that cult web I'm talking about. But whether it's that level or whether it's the cult level or whatever, it comes down to the same thing. Humanity, in its what now 8 billion a number, cannot be manipulated and dictated to by a fraction of that, a tiny fraction ultimately of that number, unless humanity acquiesces to that imposition. And I've said until my throat hurts that fascism, communism, tyranny is not brought in by fascists, communists, and tyrants. There's never enough of them to do it. That's brought in by the vastness of the population acquiescing to the fascists, the communists, and the tyrants. And if we just said, no, we're not doing it, we're not cooperating, then the whole thing would be over. But it's not. Going back to that ULEZ zone in London, it's basically a single man, the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who has decided that that's going to happen, and that all those cameras are going up and people are going to be fined £12.50 a day, which is destroying their livelihood and their ability to earn a living. One man has decided that. And there are millions and millions and millions of people living and working in the area where this ULEZ zone in London is operating. Now, there are some people who are going around and systematically dismantling these cameras at night and trying to push back in that way. But in the end, it's one guy who's dictated it. That is ludicrous. Mm-hmm. It's ludicrous. But it just shows you that it's a myth. I've heard it so many times over the years, a lot less now, mind. Mm-hmm. A few people can't control the world. It's not possible. But if the population acquiesce to the few, it becomes easy, not impossible.
Yeah. David, I think we're almost out of time, and there's so many questions I still want to ask you. Is there time for one more question, or should we wrap
go ahead. Another question would be great. Yeah.
So, as you're talking, we're talking about the presence of Satan, people being Satanists, having a presence of this satanic ritual would, to some, insinuate that there's a presence of God, right? So part one of my question is, what does that say about the presence of God? The second part of that question is, we keep hearing, and we've had a lot of guests on the Blood Money podcast that come from a Christian background. They're saying that we're in the days of Revelation, that this has all been foretold, it's all in the Bible, and they use things like the Luciferian agenda, the satanic agenda, to say, look, if that's going on, there has to be a God. What we believe has to be true. What's your thoughts about that topic?
Right. Well, what I'm saying in the books over the years is that there is a force that we call love, wisdom, and people call God. And it's not a guy with a beard sitting on a throne. It's consciousness. It's a state of consciousness. And we are part of that consciousness. We are like a point of attention within that consciousness. But there is this thing called free will. Because you are exploring, basically, you have this infinite consciousness, people call God, and you can explore as much of it as you choose. I mean, you can just access a tiny part of it and think that you have no power. I'm just little me. Or you can expand your consciousness into this or awareness into this realm of consciousness, and you can access phenomenal amounts of insight, intuitive knowledge in all its forms, and you can see the world in a much more expanded way than someone who is only accessing a small part of it. That doesn't make you better than them. It means you're accessing more of that realm of consciousness than they are, because they are being manipulated to believe that they're just little me and have no power. And what happens when you take on that perception is you create that reality, because that perception is a frequency state which limits your ability to access what is available in this infinite realm of consciousness. When you realize that what we call human is not who we are, it's an experience, that's all, brief one actually. And what's having the experience is consciousness, the eternal part of us, constantly exploring forever. That self-identity, I am consciousness, not the body, it immediately starts to expand your awareness into greater and greater swathes of this infinite state of consciousness. And so this is why people will said to me many times over the years, why couldn't I see it before? It's so obvious what's going on now. Why couldn't I see it before? Because you were there then, and now you're here. And because you're here, you're accessing that awareness of what's actually going on. There, you couldn't. You weren't able to. From that point of view, everything was apart from everything else and bewildering of what's going on. I have no idea. From this point of view, see how it all fits together now. And if you look at the way that society is structured, the way the so-called education system is structured, the media is structured, all of it, it's all about limiting people's sense of not just possibility, but sense of who they are. We're constantly told we're just humans, and we have a 70 years and 10, and that's the end of it. We're constantly told that we are subjected to the impositions of some angry God, and many religions believe that. We must know our place, when actually I say we are an expression of that God consciousness, but we're not all in the same state of awareness. So there's a level of this God consciousness that I call the all that is, has been, and ever can be, which just means all possibility, all potential waiting to manifest, that is aware that it's all that is, has been, and ever can be. That's the ultimate level of what people call God. But within that same realm of consciousness, there can be people that have forgotten that that's what they are, and they fall into perceptual states that believe they're Ethel on the checkout. or Bill driving the bus, and that's all they are. And the idea of this demonic force is to keep people in a perceptual prison in which they see themselves as limited and powerless, because then they will live limited and powerless lives and be easy to manipulate and corral into producing this energy. Whereas those that awaken, that's what awakening is, awakening from the perception of who we are to what we really are, those people are nothing like as easy to manipulate, because they can see things that other people can't see. And that's why the demonic force via this cult wants to keep people in this limited perception possibility state of being. So we have two worlds within one world. We have the world of the cult, and that passes on advanced knowledge through the generations of the cult, through the secret society networks and rituals. And there's an inner core that knows far more than even the rest of them in the cult. And that information relates to, yes, the agenda for humanity. They don't want humanity to know that, although it's becoming more and more obvious now they're getting closer. But crucially, it relates to the nature of reality and how we interact with reality, what reality is. And they want to, the reason that there's a secret society network passing on that knowledge from generation to generation is they don't want the population to know that. So this cult has also created the sources of information from which the population, the target population, get their information. So for instance, in America, it was the Rockefeller family and people like J.D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon, that created the education system. One of the major funders and manipulators of the American education system today is Bill Gates, who's a servant of the Rockefellers. And so you've got the education system, and that's not an education system, it's a programming system. It gives you a very narrow understanding of the world, because they want you to have that. They don't want you to know what reality is and what you are and how everything really works. They want you to believe what they want you to believe. And so what the education system teaches is what I call the postage stamp consensus. It's a narrow band of information and possibility that they want to indoctrinate into you in your early formative years, so you'll keep it for the rest of your life. And then you've got the media, which is owned by this cult. That's why now so few corporations own the media. And that is constantly 24/7 telling you what your perception of the world should be and what your perception of yourself should be. And this then gets indoctrinated into the population. And the population that's bought that then seeks to impose it on others that don't want to buy that. And this is why you get the cancel culture. If you're saying things that are not of that program normal, then people who've accepted the program normal, not least what we call woke, they want to silence you. They want to deplatform you. They want you to stop being able to communicate what you think. So only this postage stamp consensus reality is actually ever heard by most people. And as a result of that, they are creating a population of very limited perception, while they pass on very expanded perception through the secret society network. And when you have knowledge, very advanced knowledge, that the population doesn't have because you're keeping it from them, you're in a position of enormous power. And what people like me are doing, which is why we get cancelled and what have you, I'm banned from 27, soon to be 29 European countries and Australia, banned from YouTube, banned from Facebook, on and on it goes. The Iconic channel's just been banned by YouTube. The reason that happens is because people like me and Iconic, etc., people like you with programs like this are seeking to take that knowledge that the cult knows and let the people see it. This is what they know. This is what's going on. And what kind of happens, and I guess you would expect it, is enormous numbers, certainly over the years with me, of people in the population. You're saying this is what they're doing. They laugh at you and or call you dangerous. But since COVID, that has changed enormously, and a lot more people are open to it.
Wow, David, is there time for one more question, or?
Yeah, we'll take one more. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about God and the spiritual world. It seems as though, from what you're saying, that this is all about keeping us at lower frequencies, keeping us from our maximum selves. We're using such a small part of our abilities. They seem to be squashing us down because they don't want us to find the God within us. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, what is awakening? You see, we're kept in a low frequency state on purpose. Because not only does that mean we're producing the energy that they absorb, their sustenance, if you like, but a low frequency state is also denying us access to vast, vast realms of this infinite awareness, this infinite consciousness. And so when we, we'll have to do another interview sometime when I go into detail on the fact that basically our reality, this reality we're experiencing as human, is actually a simulation. It's a technologically generated simulation. And I was saying this from just after the turn of the millennium, and now more and more scientists in the mainstream even are saying it does look like this is a simulated reality, because when you go down the road of the simulation hypothesis, so many, if not all, of the mysteries of life and reality that cannot be explained by the official version of what this is suddenly can be explained by the simulation hypothesis. But if you take the simulation to be a field of energy, think Wi-Fi, a field of information, and we are decoding that simulation field of information into the reality that we think we're experiencing. And if we only stay within the frequency band of this cosmic Wi-Fi, if you like, this simulated reality, then we're in the world and we're of the world. All our information from which we form our perception is coming from this simulated reality. It's gotcha. But when you start to expand your awareness and open your mind and into greater and greater sways of consciousness, there comes a point where you leave the simulated reality field and you start to access knowledge, awareness, etc., outside of that field, because it's very small. This stimulation is very small, not anything like the size it appears to be. And at that point, you're accessing awareness that's not being manipulated, awareness that's not within the simulation. And you are then looking into the simulation from outside in terms of your perceptions. And you can see things you couldn't see before. You can see how the pieces fit, where in the world and of it, you can't. It's all very bewildering. But from this expanded state of awareness, you can see it. And this is another reason why this demonic non-human force is seeking to keep us in a low frequency, closed-minded state, because it knows that when you go beyond the walls of the simulation and you start accessing infinite reality beyond it, what we call God, and start bringing that energy through and expressing it in this world, then suddenly things start to change. And, it's not just that people like me are putting this information into this field and changing the nature of it. Once the information's in this field, anyone can access it. You could be walking down the supermarket aisle and suddenly get some inspiration. I think this is going on. I've never thought about it before, but it makes sense to me. Where does that come from? It comes from the fact that you're accessing that information, the vibrational information in the field. And so when people awaken and they expand their awareness beyond the simulated field of reality, and they access the infinite consciousness beyond it, they are acting suddenly as a vehicle for that consciousness to come into this reality and express it out into the simulation field. And suddenly things start to move. The simulation field's no longer got total control of perception. Now it's being challenged by another version of events. And this is the point. It doesn't matter if Facebook censor you or YouTube censor you in that sense, because they can't censor the field. If you're putting information into the field that's challenging the narrative, you are changing the nature of the field that people are interacting with. Imagine fish swimming through an ocean, and the ocean is feeding them information, and therefore they have a certain perception of reality. And then suddenly the information in that ocean is changing, and it's feeding them different information. And suddenly they're seeing the world in a different way because their information source is changing. And this awakening that's gathered so fast since the COVID hoax is having this effect. As people awaken and see the world differently, so those perceptions are going in the field, and it's building and it's building and it's building. And it's impacting upon people who've never heard an interview like this. There are people going, there's something strange going on. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something about the world. It's not as they tell us it is. This is happening, and it's happening to more and more people. The awakening now, because I've been doing this for so long, I remember what it was like in 1990 and all the years of the 1990s and across the millennium, trying to get this stuff out there. Virtually no one was interested in it now. Whoa, it's a phenomenal change that's taken place, and it's very, very encouraging. Because although the agenda's moving on, humanity's awakening is moving on. Mm-hmm. And eventually, one is going to overwhelm the other. Yeah, it won't be technology in the end that overwhelms consciousness, because technology in this demonic realm is the village idiot compared with consciousness in its true and infinite form.
Mm-hmm. Yep. David, this is amazing. One last thing, with this Argentine president that just came to power, do you have hope in terms of systematic change, in terms of getting some of these woke individuals out and turning, making a U-turn on this agenda?
Yeah, but it depends what else he believes in as well. What I would say, and I've said this about politics for a long time. Politics is a diversion. Okay, there are certain people that might come in, but it's very difficult because of the way the system is structured for a genuine person to get in. But there are political parties which have different groups within their support base that want different things. So, example, the Republican Party in America has a big base that doesn't want all this crap. So anyone coming in and representing the Republican Party has to recognize that a great chunk of its natural base necessary for support to get in doesn't want this crap. So that person will have to say the right thing, use the right rhetoric, claim to stand for the right things, but in office, well, maybe won't produce as they said they would. But the thing about the support base not wanting this stuff, it means that party has to move slower. The same agenda unfolds, but unfolds a bit slower. Whereas in the Democratic Party, and it's the same with the Conservative Party and the Labour Party in Britain, the Democratic Party, they don't have that pushback. They don't have that base that don't want this crap. They have a base that does want it because they've been manipulated to and programmed to want it. And therefore, they can move much, much quicker, as we've seen since the Biden administration came in. It's not the Biden administration, of course, but the administrations officially headed by Biden, they've moved really fast. And in Britain, the Conservative Party that's been in the government for a while, it's still moving the agenda to where it wants to go. But because its natural support base doesn't want this stuff, it's had to move more circumspect. Whereas if the Labour Party come in, a guy called Keir Starmer, who is a member of this Trilateral Commission, this CUSP organization, if he comes in, and that the polls say he will at the moment, then he'll be a Biden. He doesn't have the pushback that the Conservative Party have from its natural base, so he'll move quicker. So on that level, it's relevant to what party is in power and who's running it. Yeah, on that level. But you've got to be very careful with politics, because what it does is it buys time. What do I mean by that? The bottom line is that 8 billion people, or 300 and goodness knows how many it is, I don't suppose they know anymore, 350 million people, maybe whatever, in America, they cannot be controlled by a handful unless they acquiesce to that control, either through believing what authority tells them or being frightened of not obeying authority. So the end of the day, when people say to me, what's the solution? I say, get yourself a pocket calculator and put 8 billion in, and then take away all the people in full knowledge that are orchestrating this, even take away the police and military who are imposing it on their behalf without even knowing what they're doing. And then take that number from the 8 billion and see how many are left. And it will be very close to 8 billion. So the answer is there. We don't need politicians to do it for us. We do it by non-cooperation with our own enslavement. But to stop that happening, they have to get you to give your power away to something. You might give your power away to religion. You might give power away to a politician. So someone comes along and they tell you what you want to hear, and you say, oh yeah, I'm voting for them, and they get in and they don't do what they said they were going to do. But by the time there's another election, 4 years have passed for this agenda to move on and get more and more extreme. And that's what's happening. So you look at Donald Trump, and I know he's seen as the savior by many people in America. He's never been seen as the savior by me. I was calling him out in 2016 before he was even elected, because you don't take on what were the best part of 20 Republican candidates as basically a maverick, as he was projected, a maverick one-off, an independent guy. You don't defeat nearly 20 other candidates to get the nomination when we were told the Republican Party didn't want him. Well, when you see through the WikiLeaks revelations that the Democratic Party was systematically making sure that Hillary Clinton won the Democrat nomination at that time and not Bernie Sanders, then you see that if the Republican Party really didn't want Trump, they wouldn't have had him. And then once he won the nomination, I said, I think he's going to win because I think he's the chosen one. And he came in, and for 4 years, he said all the right things, said he wanted to do all the right things, but did very few of them, actually, if you break it down. And in the end, we had Trump pushing back against the swamp, who refused to pardon Julian Assange and Edward Snowden and pardon some real crooks instead in the last days of his presidency, and still today claims credit for rolling out the fake vaccine that has done enormous amounts of harm to enormous amounts of people. So I'm not a Trump supporter, and I'm certainly absolutely not a Biden or Democrat supporter, because they are the agenda on steroids. But what I'm saying is, whether it's here or Britain or anywhere, the answer is us. It's not Trump. It's not Biden. It's not Starmer. It's not Sunak. Not Macron. It's us refusing to cooperate with our own enslavement. The game's over then, because there's too many people and too few of those that are actually in full knowledge manipulate. And I would say, okay, you can make a calculation. Will the agenda move slower with these people or faster with these people? Okay, that's fine. But in the end, if we're going to say, here's my power, do it for us, well, I'm afraid the outcome is not going to be what we'd like it to be, because it never has been.
Yeah. David, this has been an amazing interview. I mean, I really appreciate you making time for our Blood Money podcast. Just you've been at the cutting edge, and I'd love to have you back on the show whenever you're interested, because we could have a lot of these conversations that I think would be very helpful for the people to comprehend and understand really what's going on.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get into the nature of the simulation, because actually it's very, very simple how it works. Mm-hmm. It's very, very simple. And so many mysteries of life just dissolve when you realize what this reality really is and how it works. So that would be good to get into that.
Would love that. I will definitely be in touch about scheduling that. And thank you so much again. Thank you for the viewers out there for showing up to this Blood Money podcast episode. I will see you on the next episode of Blood Money. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And my new book talks about the simulation. It's called The Dream, by the way.
Oh, but before we wrap it up, do you want to quickly talk about where people could find your book and any other links?
The Dream. It's part of a trilogy. The first part of the trilogy was called The Trap. This was my last book. This one's called The Dream, and there's a third one which I'm about to start. And you might call it the reality trilogy. It's about what this reality is and how it works. And to understand the nuts and bolts of Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, politics, and all the stuff that happens in the world of the scene, mm-hmm. to understand the simulation puts that in a completely different light. Why it's happening, why this happens, why that happens. Suddenly it becomes clear why they do what they do and the effect that it has. It's a phenomenally interesting subject, because so many pennies drop when you get into it.
Yeah, even Christians, I'm hearing a lot now, are saying that the world is a simulation. In fact, a priest was reading Genesis and saying, on the first day God created, the 7-day creation of the earth. He's like, that is a simulation. It's all a creation. It's saying it's a creation.
Well, we're going to have to finish eventually, but there's so many kind of things that shoot off in different directions. I've been saying in my books for a long time that I think the God of the Old Testament is not the God that people think they're worshiping. It's this demonic force. It's describing the creation. It's funny you should say that, actually, that it's describing the creation of the simulation. And this would start to explain I would say, unbridgeable differences between the bloodthirsty Old Testament God and the New Testament God. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you bridge that? Mm-hmm. It's the God's about love. Okay, I agree with that, but that's not what the Old Testament bloodthirsty God's talking about. Mm-hmm. He's talking about death and destruction, and you both worship me or else. What? So I think there's a lot more to know about that as well.
Welcome to Unfuck Your Mind News with Mr. Disco Ballhead. Every week on Unfuck Your Mind News, we get to see what so many batshit crazy Earthlings have been up to. Self-destructive Earthlings, commie and woke crazies, angry white females, beta soy boys, today's woke wankers. With Mr. Disco Ballhead, this is Unfuck Your Mind News. In this week's Unfuck Your Mind News, we visit Clark County of the Satanic City of Las Vegas, where an activist that is trying to save the penises of young boy Earthling children from the scissors of crazy femalist liberatus had this to say.
Why are we telling little boys that they can be girls and girls they can be boys when they can't? Because actually, that's when these kids tend to have the highest suicide rate, is after they do all this surgery. Instead, they get used like a little Gucci bag, so their mom gets attention, and they get to say that their child's trans, and none of it is based in science. It's all based in liberal ideology. And these statistics represent two-parent households. The single mother households are where these violent, crazy kids are coming from.
Of course, all the honesty and statistics made the communists go nuts.
Send her out. Send her out.
Statistically speaking, it could be
Yo, mama,
a single parent.
All right, and you are not leaving. We're going to ask you to leave.
Unfortunately, this made a very large black woman lose her mind.
Bring your ass outside.
Are you violent?
Bring your ass outside.
Are you telling me you're
You always got to shit
Another mother was recently attacked by a large white woman, a teacher in the satanic city of Las Vegas.
I don't love Nazis. Go fuck yourself.
There you go. And that is the teacher teaching your kids.
And I don't give you consent to record me. You don't have consent to record
I don't
me.
need consent.
This begs the question, why do Earthlings give their children to the sacrifice of mentally unstable communists who hate freedom of speech and facts? From our observations from Planet Disco Ball Head, when you replace a black father with an angry large black woman, this happens. And this happens. And this happens.
OG, come on, stay with me, OG. OG, stay with me.
But while this brave and smart young woman with the unusual color hair is defending the truth and honor of men, where are the men? It is clear that the Earthling men are suffering from Psitis complexus. In other news, it is clear that the Earthling people like killing their babies. And the people of Hamas are killing the babies of Israel. And the bombs of Israel are killing the babies of Gaza. And the Christian peoples of America are wanting to kill the Palestinian babies so that all the Jews, who they say are their friends, could all go to Israel, so most of them could be blown up and killed as well, so that God comes back. Anyway, in other news, it seems as though this young man who's dressed like a girl seems to be having some problems because his rights are being violated. Let's watch some video he put together about this issue.
He's having a nice feast.
She, her.
Yeah.
I use she, her pronouns. I'm not sir.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
sir?
Not.
I mean,
not.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
I don't need to be called ma'am. I just need to not be called sir. You know.
Could we please find another planet? I'm depressed. I can't sleep. I'm getting fat. The water here is making me grow tits. I need to get the out of here. The man playing Joe Biden of Communist America has stated his desire to start World War III with his girly army, all while the borders of America have been open, letting in millions of military-age men. Michael Yon has stated, "They are here to kill you and take your homes." By the way, you have my ship ready, right? For when these Earthlings go crazy, it's all fueled up so we get the fuck out of here? Michael Yon was very frustrated in his interview with America Happens. He had this to say.
For instance, that we're going into race wars. That's crystal clear in my paradigm, right? But it takes guts to say that because people don't want to be called a racist.
Earthlings, I know this information you hear on America Happens must be a little shocking. Are there evil people out there that want to cut off the penises and breasts of your children? Unfortunately, yes. Have many of these evil people taken over your courts and schools? Unfortunately, yes. Are they spraying your skies with chemicals and trying to kill you? Unfortunately, yes. Are they trying to inject you with things that will kill you? Unfortunately, yes. Will a nuclear bomb go off in the world before the 2024 election? Most likely, yes. But look at the bright side, Earthlings. What is important to remember, at least I don't live on this planet. R2D2, let's get the f*** out of here. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mr. Disco Ball Head presents Unfuck Your Mind News.
Truth in media is not free. If the corrupt corporations run the media, then all we get is a pile of lies. So please support truth in the media by donating to AmericaHappens.com by simply going to AmericaHappens.com, clicking on the support tab, and entering a generous donation. Thank you so much.
Check out the America Happens Network, because Fox sucks now.
Truth in media is not free. If the corrupt corporations run the media, then all we get is a pile of lies. So please support truth in the media by donating to AmericaHappens.com by simply going to AmericaHappens.com, clicking on the support tab, and entering a generous donation. Thank you so much.
Check out the America Happens Network, because Fox sucks now.